What's up, divehards? We are back in the manta capital of the world. Welcome to Socorro. And welcome to San Benedicto Island. Getting here was a little bit painful, but only because I was tagged by that infamous camera tax at the Los Cabos airport. It's like 20% of the value of your gear, and it's completely bonkers. I will debrief you on that situation later. But outside of that, it's been easy. I arrived in Los Cabos, took a scenic 45-minute taxi ride down to the marina at Cabo San Lucas, boarded the Nautilus Undersea that night, and then we started the crossing to San Benedicto, which is the closest of the 4 major islands that make up the Revillagigedo Archipelago. And the crossing was quick and easy, only 28 hours since the wind was behind us, a little bit rocky, but nothing that Dramamine couldn't handle. And we had a bunch of spinner dolphins join us, so I think we're back on track. And now it's time to dive with giant oceanic manta rays, by far the friendliest manta rays in the entire world. And while Revillagigedo is known for its mantas, there's also a ton of pelagic shark species that can show up, especially around the cleaning stations here in San Benedicto. So for the next few dives, I'm gonna have my eyes peeled for hammerheads, Galapagos sharks, silver tips, maybe some tigers. All the sharks can show up here. And right now we are anchored on the southeast side of San Benedicto Island. We already did our check dive here in the bay. And now it's time to see what we can find at one of my favorite dive sites, El Cañón. Let's go diving. Okay, so our dives at El Cañon were chock full of sharks, but we also had terrible viz for all 3 dives, mostly because of the ash coming off the volcano in San Benedicto. But there were lots of big Galapagos sharks and hammerheads at the cleaning station. Silvertips were zipping around us all day. It was very active at the canyon. And then on day 2 and 3, we dived around Socorro Island, which is the largest island in the archipelago. We did an exploration dive on the southwest side of the island, had great manta interactions at Punta Tosca, and then finally dived Roca O'Neill instead of the famous Cabo Pierce, since all of the rain really mucked up the visibility. And it was actually super nice. Like, Roca O'Neill is on the exposed side of the island and doesn't get dived very often, but it had very impressive rock formations and some solid pelagic action. And now we're actually back in San Benedicto to avoid the other dive boats, and of course to try our luck at the iconic boiler on the other side of the island. And then it's our turn for Roca Partida, which is another one of my all-time favorite dive sites. Just a giant pillar in the middle of the ocean where all sorts of magic can happen. Or not. Fingers crossed for something special. So that was Revillagigedo, or as I usually just call it, Socorro. And we had really good luck at the boiler. It was easily the best hammerhead action I've had in the many years I've been coming here. And there was one specific moment. I was hanging off the ledge, tucked in, just checking out a few hammerheads up there, and then I looked to my right and there's like 100 sharks going by super close. For once, the visibility was amazing. Then I look up and there's this giant black manta over my head. It was just, everything was cooking at the boiler. It was so good. And these are really the moments that I am chasing in diving, and these destinations in particular. And I've had a lot of them in Socorro, some of the time. So the 3 dives we had at the boiler on day 4 and the 2 dives we had at Punta Tosca on day 2 were the bangers that really carried the rest of the trip. And that's not unusual, but this time a lot of the other dives were uncharacteristically quiet and had pretty terrible viz. And you may have noticed that we didn't make it to Roca Partida at all, and that obviously sucked. And what happened was the forecast was looking very manageable, and then as we got underway at night, it became clear that it was not manageable. It was actually very sketchy. And the captain made the correct call to abort and take cover at Socorro Island. And basically we just had confused seas all around. Not a good idea to attempt Roca in those conditions. It has zero cover from the ocean. And it would have been nice to stay in San Benedicto because it was full of sharks, but also this is just the reality of offshore diving. And of course, safety comes first. So overall, I would describe this trip as a kind of unusual one for the archipelago, like dark and milky water for most of the dives, which after talking to the crew and some friends seems to have been the trend for the entire season up until at least January. But still, absolutely worth it. Like remember, a bad dive in Socorro is probably an awesome dive pretty much anywhere else. And then you stack the handful of bangers you have and it's just awesome. Like I had a great time. And then as a bonus, I got to reconnect with the legend, Captain Beto, who is actually the captain and my dive master on my very first liveaboard ever in Cocos Island, like many, many decades ago. And I was a young, stupid, inexperienced diver. I didn't know what I was doing, and he really helped me a lot and kind of set me on the path that I'm still on today. And he's exactly what you would want in the liveaboard captain, like cautious, optimizing for diving, generally just funny and relaxed, which is important since it is a stressful gig being the captain on an offshore diving vessel. And this time I was with Nautilus on the Undersea, which is a very solid vessel. It's actually kind of a legend in the exploration diving world. And the boat is dated, and I really hate that the crew have to break their backs 4 times a day, schlepping tanks and gear to and from the pangas instead of just refilling them on the skiffs, which is a way better setup in my opinion. But other than that, it is a fantastic boat, and Nautilus is my go-to operator for Socorro. Like they're a solid company. They definitely prioritize safety more than any other company operating in the archipelago. And that's the main reason I go with them. Like they give out PLBs for free to all the guests. All the cabins have emergency escape breathing devices, which is unusual but super helpful. And there's actually 24/7 night watch, not just on paper. And there are a lot of boats operating in Socorro. A couple of them, in my opinion, are just straight up dishonest and negligent companies. And all of Nautilus's boats are solid. So if you're like me and you like the smaller groups, the Undersea or the Explorer is definitely the way to go. And before we wrap, I do have to address that camera tax. Like technically in Mexico, the law is such that if you bring in camera, drone, computer, etc. gear worth over a couple grand, you pay 20% tax on the total MSRP of that gear, regardless of whether that gear is going to stay in the country or go home with you after the trip. And this has kind of always been around, but it was never really consistently enforced. But now the custom agents are very aware that Socorro divers tend to carry expensive camera gear, and they will screen specifically for divers at the airport. They will find your housing, your drones, your computers, they take a photo of it, they upload it to ChatGPT, it tells them the price you paid, and then they'll charge you 20% of the value of that. And if you know anything about underwater camera housings, that's devastating. And you can try to negotiate with them, but they know that you already paid for a very expensive liveaboard that you need to board within probably the next 24 hours, and that like you don't have any leverage. And so they'll typically extract around $1,000 from you, give or take. And that really sucks. And over time, that's going to hurt the dive industry. Not just Socorro, but all the other awesome diving that Baja has to offer, like Mag Bay, Sea of Cortez, shark diving in Cabo, the gray whales, Cabo Pulmo. I mean, it's amazing. And the dive industry can't really push back because it's still too small for the government to care about anyway. So you have a few options. You can, one, go somewhere else that doesn't have this absurd policy. Two, you can clear customs in Mexico City, which is technically subject to the same federal laws, but generally doesn't have a reputation of enforcing or targeting divers or trying to find cameras and stuff like that. Three, you can get an ATA carnet, which is a burdensome process and would cost a few $100s, but should let you bring your gear in duty-free, though it is Mexico and there's no guarantee that they won't try at least to shake you down anyway. And then there's four, which is the option that I've always done, which is to just take your chances in Los Cabos and try to get through without being picked on. And basically no pelican cases, no obvious dive bags, you know, like don't look like a diver. And that worked great up until now, but I'm not going to be doing that anymore. So as you decide where to go, this is something you should be aware of and honestly just be prepared for. So what do you think? Is Socorro still on your bucket list? Or if you've been, are you planning on returning? Have you been hit by that camera tax? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, dive hard.